In this video, we're going to continue working on the get user functionality, and we will write the service layer code to make this get user by user ID function working. So I will open my user service declaration. This is the interface, and I will add one more method here, which is going to return the user data transfer object, and I'll call it get user by user ID. This method will need to accept the public user ID, which was sent to us with the HTTP request. So I'm going to give it a method argument, which is going to be user ID, like this. So now, because I have added a new method to my user service interface, I will need to go to interface implementation and implement this method. I will go to user service implementation, and then I'll click here, and we'll add unimplemented methods. Okay, the method is added. I will go and find it. Here it is, get user by user ID. I'll delete the to do, and what we need to return in this function is the user data transfer object. So I'll define a return value, user data transfer object, like this, and I will return this return value. The next step is to make use of user repository to query our database for a user that will match the provided user ID. And we already have the user repository, so I'll make use of it. And the user repository always returns user entity, so I'll create user entity equals, and I will make use of user repository to find a record by user ID. We don't have that function created yet in our user repository, so at this moment I will type it, and in our following video we will go to user repository and add that method into our user repository interface. And I'm going to call it find by user ID, like this. And this method will accept user ID because it will use it in SQL query. Okay, and now once I have the user entity returned, I will first check it for null, and if the user entity is not null, I will copy its properties to user data transfer object. So here I will check if user entity is equal to null, then we will throw user not found exception and we will give it user ID. Otherwise, we will use binutils to copy properties from the source object, which in this case is user entity, to a destination object, which is a return value, like this. And I think we're done with this function. Let's just format our source code. And in the following video, let's go into our user repository and implement this method find by user ID.